Wonderful. Is this going through?
Our only friends.
You're our only friends. This is a really scary environment, I have to say. It's total darkness.
Yeah.
So welcome to the 92nd Street Y. I'm Emily Nussbaum. I'm going to moderate this. And we're going to talk about one of the most delightful things to emerge in the last year, which sounds like it's, there's a lot of bad things that happened this year. This was just one of those straightforwardly great things. So this is the way that I know that Russian Doll is a terrific television show. I'm a TV critic. And when I pulled up the screener, I'd planned to stop with one episode because I was basically trying to taste test some stuff just to see what was out there. And then I decided to watch another because it was interesting. And then I continued to watch, and I basically stayed up all night long and watched it. And I finally went to sleep, and then when I got up in the morning, I seriously considered watching it again. Because I'm a person with strong priorities and good time management. Russian Doll is about a screwed up woman who can't stop dying. But it's a more alive show than almost anything that I've seen recently. It's also very, very, very New York. So I'm happy to be here with an audience of New Yorkers. And I'd like to introduce the two of the creators of the show who are here, the fabulous Natasha Lyonne. The star of the show, the co-creator of the show, a director on the show, a writer on the show, my personal hair role model, a woman with so much charisma she could fuel the New York subway system.
Somebody's got to.
And this is Leslie Headland, who is also co-creator of the show, director of the show, and among other things, the director of one of my favorite dark comedies, the extremely fucked up Bachelorette. Which I don't know if you've seen it, but you should if you haven't. I just resaw it. It's great. So Lyonne has been acting. Lyonne, that sounds so weird.
I like it.
Since she was a little kid, her first appearance was on the Pee Wee Herman show, is what I have on the page. But backstage, she actually told me that she was also an extra in Heartburn, right?
Yes, yes, Nora Ephron. Yeah.
But she's also made indelible, iconoclastic appearances in a bunch of movies and TV shows, from which I'll simply list the ones I'm most into. Slums of Beverly Hills, But I'm a Cheerleader. And Orange is the New Black, which just finished filming its final season.
Yes.
Leslie is one of these miraculous and impressive multitaskers in multiple fields, overseeing various kinds of creativity. She's a playwright, she's a director, she makes TV, movies. She's best known for a play series based on the 7 Deadly Sins. As I said, the director of Bachelorette, the director of Sleeping with Other People, and a multitude of your favorite television shows. Her brand might be described as subversive morality tales with malicious wit, and as she described it in an interview I recently read, a specialty in worst nights ever.
That's true. Did I
said it.
Oh,
you said
okay,
it.
okay,
It's like hard because you give interviews.
Yeah.
Like I wanted
That's
to give you
amazing.
credit for it.
Gosh, I'm great.
That applies to the show as well.
Yeah.
The two of them collaborated with Amy Poehler on the show, and it starts out as, you just saw the episode, so I'm about to describe what you just saw, but a woman attends her 36th birthday party, then dies, then keeps popping back to life like a 36-year-old chain-smoking Jack in the Box. And this was the first episode. With each episode, it gets richer and deeper and stranger and funnier and sadder, becoming what Natasha has called an existential adventure, a mystery about trauma, addiction, and healing, and also hilarious. So before we start talking about it, we're just going to spoil the show. So if you haven't seen it, you're just going to have to live with that.
Yeah.
You're going to have to walk out now.
Yeah.
Awkwardly.
But don't worry, because we can't see any of you.
Yeah.
So to start off with, let's just talk about the origin story for the show. It
Sure.
started with you.
The dawn of mankind. Yeah, I mean, Leslie, no wait, Amy had called me, I mean, I'd known Poehler for 15 years or something, just as a New York lurker, which is how I describe my downtime lurking around, and it's going to be a string of answers that are this discombobulated, just as a heads up.
Through UCB? Or?
No, I guess so. I had this friend, Jake Fogelnest, who I'm still super tight with, and he was kind of a UCB guy, and we were like 16 and sort of hang around SNL, and I was very tight with Maya Rudolph, who was on the show then, so I would sort of just hang out in her dressing room. I used to be able to smoke there. I would chain smoke and watch. And anyway, so many years later, I never really realized that Amy was taking much notice of me. I mean, of course, she's such an incredible figure. But she called me up and she was like, you know, I've been thinking about you. And that was the first flattering element. And she said, and as long as I've known you, you've always been the oldest girl in the world. And I was like, now it's an insulting call. Do go on. And she said, what if we did a show together kind of based on that? And that show became a failed NBC pilot called Old Soul. And after that show did not get picked up, you know, she said to me, like, what is the show now that we were kind of tighter and sort of, I guess, on a human level, we'd be talking about deep stuff all the time, what it is to be a person, a woman, this and that. And she said, you know, what's the show we would really want to make? If we could make anything with no limitations, no network, what is it we really want to say? And that sort of became early days of Russian Doll. And you know, my character was already Nadia, who I'd always named my characters after Nadia Comaneci, my favorite gymnast from the 80s.
No, why is Nadia? I actually.
Yeah, she's just a wonderful gymnast, Emily. You know what I mean? And I think it's self-explanatory. And when, you know, of course, Leslie and I were already friends. I'd worked with her on her wonderful film, Sleeping with Other People.
That's
and
right.
when Leslie joined the table, it kind of crystallized into what really would become this sort of, you know, trifecta of us kind of having a meeting of the minds.
I keep remembering the first time we met. Do you remember that? We met at the Crosby Hotel. And it was
the very first,
very first time we met.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, immediately falling in love with you, but also that you were like, man, I'm gonna do a really bad Natasha Leone impression. You're like, where's our thing, you know, man? Like, where, you know, Leo and De Niro, they just get to go around, you know, like, but like, you know, like, why can't we do that? You know, and I was like,
I stand by it.
I'm like in love with this person, you know, and I just, that was the thing, like, obviously there was no Russian Doll at that, I mean, you and Amy had been working on it, but like, not for me, but that was the moment where I was like, oh, I really want to make this woman her De Niro, like whatever that means. Like, like it really, that was the moment where I was like, I mean, we worked on the movie and it was fun and it was like, you know, whatever, but that was the first time the seed had been planted.
Well, I think what you're leaving out is that basically we had this kind of, you know, one of those like epic storms of a conversation where it's just like the history of everything and what it could be. And, you know, when you meet somebody that's really one of your people, and we had so much common ground and kind of, you know, from our resentments to our dreams and our sort of, our language of aesthetics around, like, it wasn't just, the movies were both Tisch people.
Yeah.
Of course, Leslie completed the program, I dropped out, but, so that's the basic difference between us, but it does seem like our sort of film language and our sort of, you know, literature language was so, kindred that it really was, you know, an endless conversation that we were able to have even that first day.
What is the thing that those guys get to do that you felt like you weren't getting to do?
So many things.
So many things. I mean, you know, honestly, like when Russian Doll came out, it's just skipping ahead a little bit in the story, like I was so shocked by the response to it, just because it is about I guess what you would call an unlikable female heroine, which I had been told since I had started in Hollywood was basically something that, you know, wasn't marketable and wasn't interesting. And like, if it was, you were supposed to like kind of punish her at the end or like, you know.
Which is an old pre-code idea, really,
Right.
of like, you know, the Hays Code of punish the woman if she does anything interesting.
Yeah, if you think of like,
That's
you
what the
know,
code
That was the exact phrase.
In a nutshell.
It's like, it was like mobsters must go to prison.
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
like
if a woman does something interesting, you murder her. You know, like it's like, you know, something like that.
Quid pro quo.
I'm paraphrasing.
actually, that is the premise of Russian Doll.
Yeah.
So
And we were like, all right, we'll match
We'll
you, buddy.
murder several.
But over and over again, like we had talked about this character being like Elliot Gould in The Long Goodbye, or Roy Schneider in All That Jazz. Like we grew up with these kind of 70s tough guy movies and thought they were so cool.
Yeah.
And you know, I think when you're a female film lover and a female artist, like, you know, of course you have female people that you look up to. Like, I was in love with Elaine May when I was little, you know, but,
Mikey
you know,
Nicky.
you know, Mikey and Nikki, one of the greats. Of course, Ishtar, classic.
Yes. A little
sorry.
bit tricky. When you watch it now, Walter Matthau, not such a redeemable character, it turns out.
But most of the
I
time
almost
when
sang the
you're
lawnmower song in response.
but most of the time when you love a movie, it's got like a gangster in the middle of it, or it's got like some dude in the middle of it that's screwing over everybody, and you know, so you know, I felt like that was kind
Or
of
in a way, I think maybe what it means, this kind of, you know, this means sort of, you know, Jack Nicholson, Five Easy Pieces. Like,
Yes.
you know, the
Oh,
guys
yeah.
that got to be the dreamers. Like, I always think of that shot of Martin Sheen in Apocalypse Now where he's just staring at the ceiling fan, and we're all like, let's just watch this guy think.
He's thinking.
Having feelings, and
What's
we
he
relate.
going
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's enough. And for some reason, so to me, in a way, that's what it means that
Yeah.
these guys get to do.
Much
they get
better
to
put.
explore kind of just, you know, the act of existence as a full-time occupation. These men, they have so much to deal with. Like, these women are busy raising children and wearing outfits with their lipstick. But these men, they have to think about what it means to be a person. And that's the kind of storytelling that men, I feel like, get to do. And that was really, I think that we're both so male, frankly, that we identify with that experience in a way. I mean, I would say also
Explain we're both so male.
well, first of all, I would say also, like, you know, I mean, I love being a woman, you know, it rocks. I mean, look at my socks, have polka dots, you know what I mean?
They're good socks.
And the boys, they can't wear these
They can't wear those socks,
You
no.
know, so, but I mean, I think it's one, I mean, being female is a sort of like a much more complex version of being a man.
I agree with that.
Being a man, I guess, basically means that you get to dictate your own personal journey and freedom in this life as not related to a partner. Like, I think the female experience is sort of, the straight female experience historically has been really encapsulated by, like, who is your partner, and that your aim in life is to find that person and to be concerned about how that person relates to you and if you are worthy of being chosen. And the male experience is one of free will, that you get to kind of self-determine your destiny and what your interests are in this life. And I think, I very much think of us as kind of having, you know, big dick energy when it comes to, you know, that we sort of feel like we want to be similar. We love our partners, we love, you know, being women, but we also want to be able to kind of walk through this life freely, kind of exploring our own version of trying to search for a meaningful journey here. So
And
that
your show came out right in, I mean,
Yeah.
this is a time when there are a lot of shows
Yeah.
that have complicated female characters. There's a rise of female
Yeah.
tourism, sort of, especially on television. There's been a real explosion of this. So it's so interesting to me that you say, because I'm like, Nadja does not seem like a dislikable female character to me. She seems completely charming to me.
And I think
know she
that's
acts
really-
like a dick to some people, but like, it's not, you know.
Oh, and I don't mean to, first of all, I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm so sorry,
Sorry,
because
no,
you're a
that's-
genius. But I was just going to say that, like, that's the title of my memoir, by the way. Interrupting Geniuses by Leslie Headland. But no, I think what I was trying to say was I think I really was, one, shocked at and I think things have changed a lot since, like, for example, Bachelorette coming out. Like, when Bachelorette came out in 2012, one of the first pieces of feedback that I got was kind of like, you know, you know, this is great and everything. I mean, well, I should say, like, when the script was going around, they were like, this is great, and like, this is how women talk, but women won't pay to see this movie. Like, that was basically the information that I got, was that women weren't interested in seeing, like, something reflected back to them that wasn't...
That was ugly.
That was ugly and wasn't aspirational. And so I think in 2019, a mere 7 years later, you're looking at a character like Nadia, and yeah, I actually don't think that... I think, in a way, my PTSD couldn't allow for people to love this project as much as they have.
Yeah.
Like, I just didn't think it would happen because I just assumed she would be written off, even though I love her as I love all my characters. And, but I think I underestimated how much things have changed. And I think I also, I just think, I mean, it just has to be said, like, I think Natasha is just such an incredible presence and actor, and what she does on this show is she transcends it. Like, it's not about gender or likability or even the goal of the character. Like, when you get to episode 7, like, you are looking at someone who is showing you their soul. And like, if you can't, and the show and Natasha stare right at you. And if you can't look back, like, that's on you. And I think that so many people are in a place with our culture right now that they were ready to look back. Like, they were ready to embrace her in that way. And, you know, I'll never not be grateful for that.
It's a beautiful show. And it's interesting, the mirror thing that you're saying, because the primal shot of the show
Yeah.
is her staring into the mirror and staring into the viewer, and then them staring back at each other. And
Yeah.
was that always baked into it? And actually, I want to ask about the time loop concept and the structure of the show in general. So with the original version of it, Old Soul, was it more of a conventional?
Well, Old Soul, I would say in the first place, had nothing to do with Russian Doll in the traditional sense. It was a totally different show that basically had similar. Really what it had is kind of the character of Nadia was already sort of in existence as this kind of, this is the version of the kind of person I want to play. I think, like, in a way, I'd always been trying to sort of play this person a little bit, which was like, kind of like a tough guy who was one of the good guys, somebody who was like in this sort of like Philip Marlowe-esque way. There were other things that were similar of like the characters of Ruth, who was based on my real life godmother, but it had nothing to do with Russian Doll. It was really about, I was like an ex-gambler who was taking care of, I was running the poker game. It was actually based on my time playing poker with Tyne Daly in real life. And, so Ruth was played by Ellen Burstyn, and she lived in sort of a similar place to where Tyne lives, where friends came by, and we had great people, Richard Benjamin, Fred Willard, Marla Gibbs, and, they were her pals at the poker game, and I kind of did odd jobs for them. But so in other words, the show couldn't have been Rita Moreno. I mean, it was an incredible show, but it couldn't have been, it was an NBC sitcom.
So and the original,
Yeah.
the original
And so there
was
was-
a sitcom that had a realistic premise about a young person hanging out
Yeah.
with old people.
Kind of, and but I do think that there were kind of threads of sort of who, this is kind of the type of person I want to play, but what's like the real meat and potatoes of this person were not baked in yet, and certainly nothing to do with like the shots of what would become the shots of Russian Doll, or even the story or the narrative. None of that was in play.
So when did you develop the time loop concept?
I think that we started that, we knew that we wanted to, I think when you guys brought me the idea, there was always a party and she was dying.
Yeah.
But I think that when we started meeting up and
Yeah.
we kind of started having like a little mini writer's room, basically, like
was
Natasha and I, it was just us.
Just you guys, yeah.
And Flora.
It was just us hanging out.
Yeah.
Oh, and Flora was there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was when all of that came up.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, so maybe it's like, I remember Amy saying, like, us kind of pitching her something and her saying, okay, now go make some decisions.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, go make some
Yeah.
decisions about the world, about the rules, about where this is taking place. It was already taking place in the East Village.
Yeah.
And it was already taking place in Maxine's loft.
Yeah.
When I came on, but it was around that time that we started going into the kind of the video game aspect.
Yeah, and Leslie's being
know.
humble in terms of like her qualities as a mastermind, of really sort of like incorporating, like I think we had spoken about ideas of like circles of hell and kind of
Oh, yes.
Buddhist afterlife
Oh, we talked
concepts.
about that a lot,
And
yeah.
obviously I'm an old Talmud student, so it was
Obviously.
like it's the 92nd Street. Why? There's
Yeah.
yeshiva is riddle this neighborhood.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but you know, so I'd kind of grown up sort of thinking in terms of sort of layering concepts.
Oh yeah, like remember
and-
when you told me that, when
Yeah.
you were like, oh, I'm going 8 rabbis deep? Like
Yeah.
when we were, like, you know what, we would be talking about
Yeah.
something creative,
Yeah.
and then, you know, I'd kind of be like, oh yeah, you know, what about this thing? And then I would see you going like
Yeah.
8 rabbis deep into the, you know, the questioning.
Well,
of that,
I actually think
you know?
that sometimes that the reason it's hitting on such a big level is because like Leslie was raised with too much religion on the Jesus side, and I
Yep.
was raised with too much religion on the Jew side, and
Yeah.
as a result, we're kind of hitting you from all sides, and like all of your childhood traumas in any direction are in play at any given time.
Totally. But I think to answer your question, there were a lot of signifiers in, you know, the pilot and then the subsequent series that I don't think even we realized how powerful they were.
Yeah.
Like I think because we were shooting from the hip,
Yeah.
in such a very intense, like spiritual, mind meldy, existential way.
Yeah.
Like there were a lot of things that, like The Mirror, for example, was just something that sort of suddenly happened, and it was
Yeah.
like, well, of course she's in the bathroom, and the door
Yeah,
was
for
like
some
a thing
reason
that
it was always in the bathroom, and she was kind of like in the bathroom kind of fixing her chains, which was really just a kind of,
Yeah.
what is this private moment when you find some, but I don't think that
But it was
the
only-
layering effect meant anything.
It was only
until
when we were on set that I realized how
Yeah.
strong it was. Like when I was actually staring at you through the lens
Yeah.
and you were looking back, that I was like,
Yeah.
oh, right, because it's a mirror. I get it. You know, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't mean to sound like we're a bunch of assholes, but I just mean like, you know, I think our souls made that choice.
Yeah.
But I don't think our brains really caught. I mean, I don't know. I only want to speak for myself.
Well,
like my brain
yeah.
didn't really catch up with a lot of stuff.
It's that's kind of what's sort of deep about it on a personal level. Like when I say that the show is so personal, I don't even, you know, mean like, of course, you know, I'm open about addiction and this kind of stuff, and like, you know, been close to death, and that you know, that exists, but in a deeper sense, like the thing that happened with Leslie and I, based on our kind of our very real human experience of kind of like traumas and what we've both been through, and so many ways kind of had us unpacking and unfolding and writing it, and you know, actually being on set, making it in the kind of way that was always had that stuff, you know, percolating and bubbling in all those small decisions we were making, and kind of, you know, whether it was the frustration with the kind of the small levels of what it means, the small insults of being a woman. It's like, no, I'm not gonna fucking grab my cup like that. I'm gonna grab it like this, you know? And without realizing that that's a big decision, you know? And that's kind of backed by a lot of, you know, human experience. I brought in that Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning,
Oh, yeah.
which is really, you know, he invented the term logotherapy, and sort of it's about his like survival through Auschwitz. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. Like this idea that I think Leslie and I were really interested in, which is, you know, what is it to kind of come back from self-destruction and make the decision that you want to become a participating member of life? And I think that was slowly informing the kind of shellacking and the densifying of something that was otherwise a sort of, you know, a superficial concept. That's why early
Yeah.
on people were comparing it to Happy Death Day, a movie I've still never seen, but I'm sure is wonderful. But, you know, I think that we were just slowly kind of building with our own very personal stuff what it means to look in the mirror almost on accident in a way that we couldn't have done if we hadn't lived through it, you know?
And the video game aspect of it, meaning like it's not Groundhog Day because it's not based in a 24-hour period. It's based on, and it's also not based on merit, meaning like she doesn't get further along because she does something right. Like it's kind of a cruel world that just kills her whenever she, I mean, I guess you could make an argument that there are certain, you know, rhyme or reason to that, but you would be making the same argument about rhyme or reason in this world at all, you know, like, but to me, I think the other side of that spiritual, that man's search for meaning was this idea of, you know, that trauma is a, however you want to look at it, whether it's addiction or abuse or self-abuse, like that it is a programming that gets screwed up and it becomes a glitch.
Right.
You know, like, so we read this book by Ellen Ullman called A Life in Code, and you know,
The main, I mean, you guys saw, but the main character is a coder.
is a code, you know, yeah. And so
video.
the idea that like you could take these as kind of like larger, cooler, you know, spiritual ideas of like reflection in another person once she ends up meeting Alan, like all of those things. But then there's also, like you said, kind of the more superficial, like she's just trying to get the next level. You know, a child that loses a mother at that particular age, the same age that she turns, like she actually has no template for this next part of her life. Do you know what I mean? Like they're just, so what is she gonna do? Like what is she going to do to get to the next level that she doesn't have any guidance for? I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, but I would also say it did help also, I just want to give credit where it's due, that Leslie Headland is also a gamer. And I just want to acknowledge that, because I've seen think pieces on the world of open gaming, of open games. I don't even know the term, but I do think that it's almost like sometimes fascinating to read those things and be like, that's what Leslie meant, you know, because
you don't have to join me in there. It's a dark place, yeah.
But it's like it's interesting that like almost like the metaphysical, like the metaphor for it was like more accessible in a way than but the practical like doing of it, it's fascinating.
Is Amy Poehler a gamer?
Big time. She was gonna be here tonight, but she's hooked on with the thing with this guy. And
she's in the Matrix right now.
She's in the Matrix.
She's like, yeah.
Amy Poehler is the Matrix. Yeah.
What role did each of you guys play? Was Amy overseeing and stepping in, or like was it?
Yeah, and you know, and we wrote Amy and I wrote the second episode together, so it was definitely like more specifically intensive in that one. But she's sort of, I think, from day one been like she's like the third piece of our puzzle. I mean, it's really. Amy is like orbiting at such a high level that she has that kind of geniusy thing where it's like the one thing she says is the thing that illuminates everything. I think
totally.
Like Leslie and I are more kind of like in the kind of sauce of it, and Leslie can kind of be, and Amy can be over here, kind of be like, hey guys, just a reminder, like, what are some
I read this,
Yeah.
She's just a queen maker is
Yeah.
what that one is. But I read this somewhere and I thought it was so funny, and I know it's a little reductive, but I do think it's a good way to describe each of our roles on the show, which is that like obviously Natasha's doppelganger on the show is Nadia, and then somebody said that Amy was Maxine, the person throwing the party. You know what I mean? Like, which I was like, yeah. And that I'm Lizzie, who's the factory, which I thought was so right on. Like that. I feel like there's this gestalt. That's a word. That's the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and it's like through your leadership and guidance and being able to haunt your house, so to speak, and then Amy throwing the party, and being, like you said, that person, sweet birthday baby, like that kind of constant person that was never interfering, but was always supportive and always pointing out the stuff that maybe we hadn't seen the forest for the trees, and that I'm the overall wearing hot chick who's played by my wife.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like you play.
My wife is playing me.
I want to ask about somebody else who's in the credits. And I want to ask about Dave Becky.
Yeah.
Who's he's a producer on the show. He's your manager. He's Amy's manager, and he was Louis C.K.'s manager.
Yeah.
And in the aftermath of that, several people dropped him because the women that Louis had masturbated in front of said that that he had told them not to talk about the story. And I just want to ask about your thinking about him and being involved in the project and your decision making.
Yeah, well, it's certainly something that, given so much thought to and, still thinking about. He really, he's been my manager for over 20 years, through all the good and the bad times. And he's been a producer on the show who's been a really, active producer on the show and really helped get it made for the 7 years that it took to kind of see it there. I think, intellectually, ethically, like these are big ideas to think about and keep unpacking, and I think it's good that he confronted it squarely and that he really owned up to his part of it and apologized for it. And I think it's continuing to be like in the discussion. And I think these are the conversations that we're continuing to have as a society as we kind of, grow and discuss this stuff. I think it's important that we keep listening and discussing. I don't think there's any kind of easy answers on it. I don't think it's anything that I take lightly. Yeah. those are my answers on it. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, it's also, I mean, I don't know what a satisfying sort of answer would sound like, to be honest.
I thought that was satisfying.
I hope so.
Do you see Nadja and Alan as addicts?
I would say that I don't see Alan as an addict. I relate with Alan a lot. Like
when did Alan come into the show? Because the show
well,
centered.
Alan was always in the pilot, but he became a different character when we got into the writers' room, and we started getting other input from the other writers and all of their pitches on what this person could be. Like we always knew he was going to be this kind of.
He started as like a jet propulsion lab.
Yeah.
Rocket scientist who
And then-
Nadia had a crush on at the party.
Yeah,
and
but-
very quickly was like, nah.
Not that. But if you remember, he was the guy that kind of showed up in the second loop and we didn't know why he was there. Like he was always like a disruptive force.
Yeah.
You know. But I don't see him as an addict necessarily. I actually see him as a. I relate with him a lot personally. I don't know how you feel, but
How do you relate to him?
I relate with him so much because he reminds me of a particular time in my life where I was really denying who I was in order to present, and I'm speaking specifically about my sexual orientation. You know, like that I was like, I don't know if that's Alan's thing, but like, especially what he says in episode 7 and the way he wants his mom to love him and the way he's so scared to give up on something that's so clearly not working was exactly how I felt in the world of trying to present as a heterosexual woman. It's one of those things as a writer where, you know, I don't think I realized it until we were like in the edit, to be honest. I think I mentioned it to you, like watching the edit, like watching them all together, I suddenly was like, oh my God, this is my story. You know, like I don't think it was meant to be. It was written by many different women, you know, like it's like, but I just related so much with him. I see him more as a person that's stuck in a cycle of his own making and a prison of his own making. And I guess that could be an addictive thing. I think pretending to be someone you're not can be very addictive. It can be very satisfying to fool people for a very long time.
I have to say, when I rewatched the show, which is one of the main things about doing this panel, is a great excuse to completely rewatch the show, as I said. And I got so many different things out of it watching the second time. But the first time, I think I was so blasted by how charismatic and fascinating Nadja is that I didn't pay as much attention to Ellen. And when I watched it again,
such a great actor.
It seems so central to me, especially the idea that comes up, I think, about another set of eyes and the idea of being able to have somebody else see you. I don't know. I found him a really beautiful character. This is not a question.
Yeah,
But I don't know if you
Charlie
think,
Barnett is.
I don't know if you thought he was, oh my God, Charlie's amazing, but I don't know if you felt that he was maybe an addict or, I guess he drinks a lot.
I mean, I think that, you know, it's interesting when we talk about, I mean, listen, you know, the show is ultimately very heavy, and that's what's been so intense about, you know, with all this stuff, it's like we're really trying to kind of like talk with transparency, like huge stuff. Like we're trying, I think, to really have big conversations in kind of like fun ways or something, which is already weird. And when, like we're talking about when we watched them down, I think by the time we got to episode 8, and Leslie and I kind of did this exercise of watching them all together. Yeah. We were like, no one else is going to do this but us. Let's do it. And
it's so true.
I mean, Rebecca, and, who's here, was there. But, you know, who plays Lizzie. And, but we were like, I remember just starting to cry. Like by the time we got to 7, and it was like so heavy with like my mom and Chloe, and it starts getting very kind of personal and intense. And then by 8, it was like, oh my God, I think we made a show about suicide, you know?
Yeah.
Which was this kind of very, like I'm saying, this sort of heavy unintentional thing where like, I think that Leslie and I are both kind of in a very healthy place in our personal lives at this point. You know, we're like older, we're kind of a bit out of the woods, thankfully, like, and we've done a lot of fucking work to get there. But I don't think that for either of us, without, you know, saying too much, I mean, I'm an open book probably against my will, but, you know, it's obviously there's a lot of dark times that we've lived through. And so I think the idea that kind of unintentionally, just in trying to kind of make these characters get from A to B and sort of putting so much personal stuff into them, we'd actually made a story on accident about like please don't take yourself out. Like, you know, it was sort of the revelation, which again doesn't answer the question of addiction beyond what.
No, I agree.
You
with you.
know,
I mean, it's one of the things that's really fascinating to
Yeah.
me about how the show is structured is that it is basically like every 2 or 3 episodes it turns over and it feels like it's about something slightly different.
Yeah.
Like suicide, and not just suicide, but a death wish, which is not the same thing as wanting to commit suicide.
Yeah.
But, I was actually, one of the questions I had was,
Yeah.
which one is your favorite death? Which now sounds horribly morbid to ask after
Yeah.
you saying it in such
Yeah.
a serious way. But I was actually curious because there are so many deaths in the show. Like, I was curious about like you coming up with the.
well, one that I know from me, the answer is I think that like by the time we got to 7, it was like there was a lot. Oh, hello,
thank
sir.
you. I'm going to take your questions.
He's hooked
We're going
on
to answer
death.
this question.
By the time we got to 7, there was so much like, you know, Leslie is such a beautiful director, and we really had this kind of, we'd had all these months prior kind of working together so close. So by the time we got to 7 that Leslie was directing, it was, we did this thing of, you know, Nadia kind of like trust falls into, you know, Lizzie and Maxine and Alan's kind of
Oh,
arms.
yeah.
And something very fucking weird happened. Like the kind of thing.
which thing is this?
This is in the deli in
Oh,
episode
yes,
7. And where like you kind of hear it, and I think that's the thing that people become hooked on when they talk about acting, is it has having an addictive component. I think what they mean is this thing where you fully disappear for a minute into another person because you totally know who they are and you trust all the elements around you. Like we'd been shooting for so long, it was all at night in the winter, and it was like you're not even there anymore. And something very weird happened where like in that death, like I kind of dropped out of myself and it almost felt like I was like flatlining in this weird way that I was like, when I came to, I was just like, oh yeah, no, we're good. Like, you know, oh yeah, let's go again. That'll be great. Great idea. Yeah, and a little more in the eyes. Gotcha. And it was like this weird sort of like secret that I had of myself of like, did I just fucking die? Like what? All right, we're cool. And luckily, you know, because of the years of addiction, I have a lot of experience with that. So I was like, we can keep working. But like nothing but a head rush, kids. But that was weird. That was like the moment that something, it was like a trust fall into also Leslie, into like the
Yeah.
crew, into the whole, into
Oh
the
my God.
writing, into the character. You know what I mean? Like there was something that happened that was very other in that one.
I love the one where you pulled the glass out of your mouth.
right.
And the reason being that, like, I love all the deaths on the show, but, like, the first one I'm extremely proud of because I think that car hit is so,
Yeah.
you know, impressive, and everybody who made that happen,
Beck.
Chris Place, Becca GT, like, Chris Teague, our DP, like, all the camera operators, like,
Yeah.
that's one take. That's what you see is what we did. And, but we really wanted to scare everybody. And then when you get to 2, we kind of wanted to make death funny. Do you know what I mean? Like now death's gonna be funny as she's like falling down the stairs. And then like with the honeybees, it's gonna be even more ridiculous. And like,
the honeybees
you know,
is one of my favorites, and then the other one is like when they fall into those the you know the basements on the
Yeah.
what do you call it where the doors
yes,
go
oh,
up?
the great, yeah.
I'm like, I always think I'm going to fall into those.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you see it happen numerous times. But anyway,
Yeah.
so you were going
No,
on.
no. I was just going to say that the reason I'm so proud and of what I guess you could call the last death of pulling
Yeah.
the glass out was that I'm so proud of it because we made death scary again. Like I was
Yeah.
like, we made it scary, then we made it funny, and then we made it scary again.
Yeah.
And it's all in total like deference to your performance in that scene. Like, you know, we talked about what's that great movie with Isabel?
Possession.
Possession.
That was actually what
Yeah.
I did the night before to kind of celebrate beginning the process.
Yeah.
Was I did a double feature of Possession and not Repulsion, another movie. I'll
Another
think
movie
of.
with
Yeah.
Ushin at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went from the Film Forum to Brooklyn.
But yeah, you nailed it. Like,
Possession.
I mean, I remember really like watching it and kind of like, you know, you're doing your job right. I think as an actor, when you're at Video Village as the director watching it, and people at Village go, like, like while they're watching it, and I was like, yeah, this is amazing. This is incredible. I also just love the way you fall from like when we cut out to the wide, and you just go down. Like, you just went down in such a way where like this woman still, you know, she's so resilient and beautiful, and she finally gives up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in that moment, she finally lets it go. And kind of what you're saying about your moment of like
Yeah.
falling into your friend's arms. Like there was something about that next one that like really touched me
Yeah.
as a person.
I'm going to take some audience questions here.
How dare you?
The first one is, how did you select the song that plays every time? I
Oh,
think
yeah,
we're all
will you
familiar with
answer
the
this?
song. And actually, I want to know, were there other options that you considered?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember when this happened? Because I've been doing, and I don't remember.
What, Harry Nelson?
Yeah, how did that become the song?
Well, I think that we had like a list. I think
'Cause you sent
I'd
me
been
that
making a playlist,
that
right?
playlist-
and then
that
I
huge
shared this
playlist, yeah.
playlist with Leslie, and then we were just kind of, I think, both of us got sort of in the zone of listening to all of the songs a bunch, and a lot of them actually did make it in from that list. There are other ones in other places, and I think then we kind of like came down to it and had a discussion. It was sort of like, I don't remember who the final contenders were. It was Harry Nilsson. Maybe it was like, I think the other one was something that was just not right because it didn't have enough different moods. Maybe it was like Lou Reed, Crazy Feeling or something.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I
And
remember that.
Then there was also sort of like Brian Eno in discussion that was like a
Oh,
little bit
yeah.
too sort of, again, like things that would have been amazing inside the show, but were not like the hero. And you were really into it. You were like definitely, like you were like Harry Nilsson. You were like, we got to do
Yeah.
that. And like you were very,
I guess there was a
Yeah.
part of me that thought we wouldn't get it, though.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so maybe that's why I was doubled down. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I kept like, I was trying to like psych
Yeah.
myself up, but like I was worried we weren't.
I think until the bitter end. And there was
Yeah.
also, by the way, there was Ronnie Spector was one of
Oh, yeah.
in the
What,
mix.
Ronnie Spector?
And then Lil' Kim. I think it was
Which
really-
Ronnie Spector show, which song?
Maybe
which,
Paradise and
Tonight's the night.
oh right.
Or Not Tonight.
Yeah, and Not Tonight from Lil' Kim.
Lil' Kim was Not
Tonight's
Tonight.
the Night. Even Neil Young was in. I mean, there was like a lot of sort of. We knew that there was sort of thematically what we were going for, and I think Harry Nilsson was a bit of an outlier also in that he was sort of the least familiar, and yet I think because of the Beatles and because of his relationship with John Lennon was oddly intensely familiar to all of us on a kind of reflexive sort of innate level. And then mostly what we wanted to do was kind of like connect to a lineage of human horror that exists with Harry Nilsson's personal story of kind of his, you know, if you've seen the documentary on him, you know, so there was, we knew we wanted kind of a player like that. I mean, you could say the same for Nina Simone, but I think it wouldn't hit the same vibe somehow. So I think we knew we wanted somebody who had an intense personal story as well that would sort of mirror kind of Nadia's thing on multiple levels.
it also can be listened to numerous times and never become.
Yeah. And till the bitter end, like Leslie's saying, I mean, it was a real fight of because the amount of times that we were reusing it, we didn't have the budget of Groundhog Day, so it was scary till the bitter end, but you know, we fought and we got it.
Why Alphabet City? What's your connection to the neighborhood?
You know, it's my neighborhood, and don't look for me there. And it's, you know, it's also funny. Like we talk about this a lot, but you know, Alphabet City sort of isn't even what Alphabet City was. Kind of, everything is so gentrified.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to littering?
Yeah, whatever happened to littering and David Dinkins? Nobody talks about either. And
Oh man.
those,
I'm sorry, this is just a cute behind the scenes story,
Yeah.
but like I remember you made that joke
yeah,
when we were in an Uber.
yeah.
Like it was just one of those beautiful moments, like
Yeah.
with like beautiful Natasha moments where it's like there was like a pause and then you went, "Remember littering?"
Yeah.
And I I was like, I just couldn't stop laughing. I was like,
Well, because
we have to put that in the
remember
show.
that? Like
Yes.
you used to just throw plates out the window. You'd eat your pizza. You'd eat your pizza. You'd be like wasted eating your pizza, and you'd roll down the window and be like, "I'm done with that." And like, it was totally normal. That was like where the plate went with the little cellophane. Like next, then you light up in the taxi and be like, "Where are we going?"
Oh my God, smoking in the
Yeah, and
cabs.
you'd be like,
oh my God.
Smoking is-
smoking, littering. So it was old New York. And this is what
You
people
guys
like.
know.
Yeah, this is what
guys
people like.
This person says, the women in the show were highly intelligent, hot, and cool, and the men were kind of blah, mediocre. I feel like New York City is like this. Did you do it on purpose? She said, that one guy got laid a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks. And I actually
Well,
wanted to mention,
yeah.
I found that guy rather hot. And we
So
had
do
this
I!
discussion about this on Twitter. There was like a
Yes.
debate.
Yeah.
Listen,
Because it was 3 different women. It's
I
only
think you
super
win
quick.
because
Hold on
I
a
was like,
second.
Leslie has feelings about this.
I think Jeremy Bob is hot. Nobody?
I'm applauding.
You and I are the only people.
I think he's hot. There's something about, like, listen, I just don't, I'm gay, so take that into consideration when I say this. But there's something about Jeremy. I mean, poor Natasha knows. Like when I saw Jeremy in the Nick, I was like, oh my God, I love this guy because this guy does not like. You never find a male actor who is like so down to lose every scene. Do you know what I mean? Like he was like he lost every scene. Like there was never a scene where he won. And I guess there was just something about me that knew Mike was never really gonna win. Like he might be thinking he's winning, but like I just felt like Jeremy would so roll with how much we were gonna make fun of him, how much we were gonna like.
Also, like every line that he has that's
Yes.
about politics or culture or something is the most
And he
precise.
just also sort of like sums up that guy that's walking around right now, who's letting us know how things are going. And I'm just like, I don't want to hear about it, but I also kind of want to suck your dick.
Yeah.
So
The thing is, he has. I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, because because we were bonding over the like.
I know Emily and I get it.
He has a certain kind of confidence about the exact kind of mediocrity that he provides, and actually, as she says in the show, she's like, he's not a terrible lay. Like he's actually, like he's not great, but it's like, you know, it's
I'll
like the
say
pizza that you
something
threw out the
very
window.
personal, which is I don't know, because now we're going rogue. But, you know, I don't know if any the women and the men probably identify with the experience that you're like, hey, look, this is my body. I'm not dying to show it to you. If I can get somebody else that is just kind of like a body I'm not dying to see, maybe we can dim the lights and just sort of see what happens. And it's going to be like it's the opposite of a performance. If that's what you're looking for, this might be your type, right? And we had Annie Steppo's great Jack Nicholson face, which is everybody
Nicholson faces.
is into Nicholson, and
I'm into it.
And also, but remember all those improvs that were happening at the bar with Alan? Of it's like two mediocres slapping into each other. Like it was a lot of.
It was a B minus,
Yeah,
you know, like it was like two B minuses,
yeah.
you know, like which
Always
I
put-
disagree with, but
Yeah,
I think there's a time and a place. There's a time and a place to fuck that guy. And sometimes it's on your 36th birthday when you keep dying. You know, like it's like I just feel like
That's the message of the show.
the message of the show.
I do think we wanted, you know, men who were like grown-ups, and sometimes that's not as sexy. You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting that, and yeah. That's
Anyway,
cool.
I'm very happy you agree with me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out if you should. Do we have to close up at 9? How, should I have one? Okay, because I have like I have an assortment of questions here, and some of them are longer, and some of them are. A voice comes from beyond. Yes, so I'm trying to find.
Yeah.
I say we just go until they kick us out.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, guys, thank you.
I'm trying to find
So
a
nice.
simple question because we have
Yeah.
2 minutes. If you could come back as an animal, what would you be?
Oy, oy, oy.
It's actually
a dog.
A dog.
Sure. Her dog.
Her dog. What message did you want to communicate with the goldfish memory comment in episode 1?
Oh, what's the comment again? Oh, goldfish have no memory.
Right.
Which is a myth.
It was a prolobotomy idea.
And what was the
remember?
question? Yeah.
Just what message did you
Let's
want
just skip that question.
Yeah, let's skip it.
to Okay. I'm sorry.
No, well, I'll tweet about it.
Let's see. Okay, one person said, is there any part of the show that is particularly autobiographical in any way to you, Natasha, your cousin, Lynn Mauerstein?
Oh, well, hello. I didn't know I had a cousin. You know, actually, I thought that I was Natasha Henstridge in Species and just kind of came out of an egg. So it's always wonderful to hear you have.
We'll leave that one
family.
alone.
But
you have a-
yeah, no, I don't know that there's. I think there's so much that it's like chicken or the egg.
I kind of feel that way about it too.
Yeah.
I'll just. I actually wanted to ask about
Yes,
like,
excellent
the
question.
thing on the
Yeah.
just the thing on the door
Yeah.
in the bathroom. Where did
Yes.
that come
Oh,
from?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
also the gun in the door.
Yeah, that's you, isn't it?
I
yeah.
think gun might be me.
Yeah.
I just remember, I remember when I first, like, this doesn't have anything to do with the actual door and why,
Yeah.
you can probably speak to, like, why we made the choices we did. I just remember when I first came on the project,
Yeah.
one of the first images that came to mind to me
Yeah.
was a door, like, just moving toward
Yeah.
a door with the camera and, like, and Ruth's voice.
Yeah.
Like, just saying something. I don't remember. I think I, like, free wrote something.
Yeah.
But, so I think that's where it started.
Yeah.
But that was just, the door always, whenever we shot it, it reminded me of, like, the first spark of the show for me. I mean, you'd been with
Yeah.
it for a while, but like,
But I think it's, you know, I think we were always kind of like building on sort of mythological concepts often
So
in
the
the show.
spooky
sort of,
blue vagina shape was like what mythological concept?
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so excellent to end there because,
well, it's just like
Yeah.
birth and, I mean,
Yeah.
the boring version is that it's birth and death in one
and
moment.
the abyss.
You know,
what
but
I
it's
mean?
also
it
like
ends
I
up
love when you
being-
call it the black hole meets,
Yeah.
you know, they shoot horses.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think it's also that.
Yeah.
The choice of having to open the door every single time, you know, it
Yeah.
just felt like it would be harder if.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
and at this
that.
point, we're
Yeah.
going to go through the door. So we'll,
Yeah.
we'll tie up. Thank you, everybody.
so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Emily.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for doing
Emily.
this.
I could talk endlessly about this show.
Well, it happened.
Thank you to everybody for coming.